Okay, Argentina have achieved two things today. One, they pulled off a slight shock in holding Japan to a 0-0 draw, and secondly, it's their first ever point at a Women's World Cup. They weren't expected to win, they were actually expected to get a hiding to nothing today, and that wasn't the case. Partly because they played to their strength, which was their defence and their organisation and their work ethic. They played to their strengths, and that's what any team should do, is always play to your strengths. They strangled the midfield by placing bodies in the way. So that middle corridor from box to box was choked with Argentinian defenders, basically. The 10 outfield players at times basically were a blob, in the sense that they were working in defensive units, defensive pairs and trios to shut down the Japanese player in possession. And the Japanese played into the Argentinian hands by trying to play through them. There weren't enough balls going up wide and then quick crosses coming in. Now, the Japanese are the smaller team for height, so they were going to have to put low crosses in. They didn't even do that enough. Very, very, very few clear-cut chances. And the Argentinians defended very, very well, and their goalkeeper played very well as on top of that. So when you've got a goalkeeper who doesn't want to give up a goal and is fighting hard to keep that clean sheet, and you've got 10 outfield players fighting hard to also keep the clean sheet, and using that rock of solid defence, you've got a good basis to go from. They obviously were playing on the counter-attack. Now, the Japanese had about 60 to 70% of the ball and completed over 600 passes. That's a lot of passes. That's a lot of possession football. The issue was the possession they had was at too slow a pace. And while it's the first draw of the tournament and the first goalless draw of the tournament as well, the issues were the Japanese wasn't them having the ball. They were having the ball in the wrong areas, and they weren't passing and moving with pace. It became far too predictable and easy to read. And if you are a defender, you can just defend in a line of 4 or a line of 5 or 2 banks of 4 with a roving midfielder and the centre forward up front to defend it. You can defend what's in front of you. And if they're passing in front of you doing nothing at pace, it's easy to defend. If there's no one running off the ball at pace to stretch defenders and move the markers around, it's easy to defend. And that's pretty much what happened for 90 minutes. The Argentinians had the odd counter-attack here or there and the odd attempt on goal. The Japanese had a lot of the ball though, and it just wasn't moved fast enough. So the Argentinians will take a lot of heart from this. This is their first ever World Cup point. They've kept a clean sheet, which they couldn't do 12 years ago when they were last at the World Cup in 2007 in the women's game. They conceded 11 goals in 1 and 6 goals. They conceded like 33 goals in the last World Cup they were at. So they took a hammering, 12 years ago. They've come a long way. The women's game in Argentina has come a hell of a long way in 12 years. They're going to get their first professional league next year. The federation's going to start funding a professional league. So the women's game in Argentina has come massive strides. The Japanese have been to back-to-back World Cup finals, winning one and being runners-up in the other. This is not a World Cup winning team that I saw today. Not by a long shot. That was a very poor performance by one of the favourites for the tournament, because the Japanese system, it doesn't matter how many new players come in, they play the same way, and there's a philosophy there. This is not a well-beaten team right now. There's a lot of new faces in the squad, there's a lot of youngsters in the squad, which is not necessarily a bad thing. The philosophy is the same, but the performance today says to me that this is not a team that's going to go and lift the World Cup. No. Very, very poor performance, and it basically came down to having a lot of the ball, which is a good thing, and then not doing anything with it, which is the bad thing. They were doing it all at slow pace, too many aimless passes, and this happens a lot with a lot of teams. That on a lot of matches that I've covered in international games and at club games, this is what I see a lot with a lot of teams, and this is a danger when you have a lot of possession, is that you don't use it effectively, and it just becomes a rhythm of you get into a passing rhythm, and then you don't click into that second, third, fourth gear when you add that bit of pace to it, and it becomes a danger that you become complacent in your passing and predictable in the possession as well. And that was Japan's undoing today, is how they couldn't win the game, was they became predictable and lethargic in their play. I understand it's the first game of the tournament for both sides. You want to play into a tournament, but that's not how you play into a tournament. You've got to have occasionally that player just running with the ball down the wing. That player, making the run off the ball and pass and move quick. It didn't happen. And the Argentinians can be very, very happy with their solid defensive display. I think they were playing to keep a clean sheet. And they were also possibly playing to get that set piece because of the extra height they had and the physicality, but also that little counter-attack goal. And, they had their opportunities as well, but they didn't have a lot of the ball. And so if they continue to play like that against the better teams, their fitness will be challenged. So it'll be interesting to see how they play against England and Scotland, who, had a very open end-to-end game yesterday. It'll be very interesting to see how the Argentinians perform against two sides that played very well yesterday in a very competitive match. And the Scots will look at this and go, we're bottom of the group at the moment, but there's an Argentinian side that don't have a lot going forward in that sense, as in they're very limited going forward, but they're very solid defensively. If we have to break them down, we've got to do it at pace. The English team, again, will look at that and go, we broke down the Scottish side that were very defensive in the first half and scored 2 goals. We're going to have to do it against Argentina. They're going to be defensive. So Argentina have got to, play the same way and frustrate England and Scotland. Japan, I'm scratching my head with that, because that was a really, really poor performance from a team that a lot of us expected. And they are one of the favourites. They've been to back-to-back World Cup finals. Not well beat today. But there we go. That's the first game of the day done. They've got the Canadians coming up in 45 minutes. They kick off their campaign. The Canadians are another team that are highly fancied for this tournament. So that's going to be a little fun game to review as well and watch. And thank you very much for watching. Place your comments below. If you like what you've seen, drop a subscription in there, drop a like. Also, be aware, I'm not just covering women's football. I cover nearly every sport you can think of, but at the moment I'm focusing a lot of effort on the World Cup. But there are some other key stories to look at, like the NRL, State of Origin, selections for the Rugby Union World Cup coming up. The London Broncos with that dramatic win against Saints in the Super League. That's a big story. We've got to look at the London Broncos and their history. I think I've got to do a video on the London Broncos because they are my local rugby league club. So there's more to come. The Stanley Cup final has gone on to Game 7, so that's another interesting thing to look at. Can the Blues get their first Stanley Cup, or can the Boston Bruins win their second cup in a decade? That's going to be really fun to look at as well. So for now, thank you very much for watching. Goodbye, and I'll have some more videos for you very, very soon.